The breaking news into SportsCenter this morning. A rough time for septuagenarian coaching greats Nick Saban and Pete Carroll. The news about them yesterday, and now Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots are parting ways after 24 historic years together. Let's bring in our Patriots reporter Mike Reiss now with this. Mike, we saw the news conference on Monday where Bill Belichick intimated that he'd be willing to give up some GM duties to continue coaching the team. And now the word is that it's a mutual parting of the ways. So where does the truth lie there?
So, David, obviously you used the word historic, and that's well said for what this day is for the Patriots franchise. You know, when Bill Belichick had made those remarks on Monday, it was less than 24 hours after the season ended. And we all knew what was coming, which was a meeting with owner Robert Kraft, and more than one meeting, and that there were going to be conversations about how they would go forward. So there was still an unknown at that point as to how it would all unfold. I do believe that they came to an agreement here mutually, but Bill Belichick had made it clear that he planned to coach the team until someone told him otherwise. So that was his intention at the time.
It is so difficult, Mike, to move on from a legend, and here the Krafts are making this decision mutually, I guess, with Bill Belichick. But how would you characterize the relationship between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick at this point in time?
So, David, Robert Kraft often described the relationship with him, Bill Belichick, and even Tom Brady like a marriage, right? Like over time it evolves. And maybe you have the honeymoon period at the start, and then it goes through some ups and downs over the years. And I do think the last couple of years have brought with it some challenges for both of them. And in past years, when those challenges have come up, winning has always been the piece that sort of helped smooth it over. I would say the last 2 years, David, with losing records, no playoff berths, that hasn't happened. And I think maybe because of that, it's sort of hung in the balance when you talk about the relationship there.
Yeah, even for the greatest coach in NFL history. All right, so we know that Bill Belichick has basically made it known that he wants to continue as a head coach. He turned 72 in April. Can you give us any sense of what a potential landing spot might be for Belichick out there in the NFL?
David, that's always hard to do. I think one team that a lot of people have looked at right off the bat here is the Atlanta Falcons, just in terms of when Bill Belichick goes in and the type of structure that he could provide an organization that might be looking for a spark. So I think when you measure it out and all the openings there, that's one with a owner in Arthur Blank who might be inclined to say, let's go for the big splash here. So it's all speculation at this point, but that would be one in a division that Bill Belichick might look at and say, could maybe make some dramatic improvement there and find himself back in the postseason pretty quick.
Falcons franchise, of course, looking for a quarterback, as are the Patriots at this point in time. Mike Vrabel, he's out with the Titans. Who might be in line to succeed Bill Belichick in Foxborough?
So, David, Robert Kraft, 82 years old, the owner of the Patriots. Obviously, the idea of a succession plan isn't something that is sort of he's thinking about at the last minute here. And the name to just everyone should at least put near the top of the list is Gerard Mayo, the assistant coach here for the Patriots. The club had announced that it had signed him to an extension this past offseason, which was very unusual for the Patriots, who usually don't announce those type of things. And just for longtime observers of the team, media members, that was a tip-off that, you know, in any succession plan, Gerard Mayo should at least be mentioned as part of the possibility. He was a first-round draft pick of the team here in New England in 2008, joined the coaching staff in 2019. So I'd say Gerard Mayo, Mike Vrabel, those are two names that when you're starting to formulate a list should be right up near the top.
Of course, the Krafts haven't had to make this kind of decision in about a quarter century now, so it will be very interesting to see who succeeds Belichick there. The news conference today at noon Eastern, do we have any sense of who will be there? Like, will Bill Belichick be in attendance?
So that is a great question, David. We're just learning the information about the news conference at noon today, and it does look to me like it says Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick will address the media today. in the team auditorium at Gillette Stadium. So the fact that both of them are there together, thinking back to the first question we talked about relations between them, you know, David, if it wasn't mutual, the idea that maybe they probably wouldn't be together, right? And that's a significant development there.
Mike, I asked this of Adam Schefter earlier. There had been talk that Bill Belichick, if he continues coaching, he could be traded because he certainly has some trade value. Do you have any understanding of why the Patriots wouldn't wait that time and try to make a deal for Bill Belichick?
So I do, David, and I think part of it's the dynamics that you could almost connect it back to when Tom Brady left the franchise. You know, the Patriots could have put the franchise tag on Tom Brady back in 2020, but they told him they wouldn't do that because they felt like everything he had given the organization, they weren't going to hold him here against his will. And I believe the same dynamics are in play with Bill Belichick. Everything he's done for this organization, poured his heart and soul into it, the championships, the work, just not going to do that to someone like that. And it's the same dynamic that I saw unfold with Brady.
It's an unreal situation. The greatest coach in NFL history is now a free agent. Mike Reiss, our Patriots reporter, giving us the full story here.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be part of this organization and lead this team. All I really am about is trying to win football games.
And it's good! And the Patriots are Super Bowl champions! Back to back. Yes, it's a dynasty.
It's trusting each other and everybody doing their job.
And it's good. Intercepted. They have completed the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. Yes, it's still a dynasty.
For me, still the most important thing is the game. Building and working together as a football team. And I enjoy that part of it the most.
Dan Orlovsky joins us now on SportsCenter. Dan, the Patriots, we know, will have a press conference at noon Eastern today. Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft expected to speak. But when you look back on Bill Belichick's career, what comes to mind first?
Greatest of all time. And in many ways, this is one of the, with him and Coach Saban retiring yesterday, you know, the end of the, you know, two of the greatest American sports runs ever. And I don't think we'll ever get a dynasty in the NFL like the one that Coach Belichick led in New England. Just with the way that free agency is changing and how much college football is changing, the money aspect of the game, we won't see another performance like this, certainly not with head coach and quarterback in the same spot for a long period of time. And for him to accomplish what he did with that football team in the era of free agency boom is one of the most remarkable things in the history of the game. And he's going to be sought after. There's going to be a lot of desire because he can still absolutely flat out coach. But the accomplishment and what he was able to get done in New England is the greatest dynasty in the history of the NFL.
Dan, you just mentioned his future, and we just heard Mike Reiss mention the Falcons as one of his potential landing spots. If we're going to put a name close to his, what do you think of that when I say Falcons and Bill Belichick?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think Coach Belichick's going to go to the AFC. Just out of, again, you just heard Mike Reiss, who's, again, outstanding at what he does, lay out, you know, the reason why potentially the trade doesn't happen. I think there's just this appreciation on both sides for him to not to go to the AFC. If he does, we see. But I think more than likely ends to an NFC team. Atlanta makes a lot of sense. I could see Washington as well. Washington with new ownership and, you know, the history of the people that, or at least the individuals that are being charged, Magic Johnson, Bob Myers, they have the second pick of the NFL draft, so there's appeal in that to potentially go get a young quarterback. I think he goes to an NFC team, but he's going to be sought after. There's a reality to this situation as well. You know, 3 out of the last 4 years in New England have not been good. They go back to 2019. They get beat at home in the playoffs by Tennessee. And ever since then, this organization has just slowly dissipated talent-wise. 3 out of the last 4 years have not been good. In the last 2 years, they're 12 and 22. The only 3 teams worse are Chicago, Arizona, and Carolina. So from a Patriots aspect, this had to happen. You know, you could no longer band-aid this. And from a Coach Belichick aspect, this was a failure to make a roster that was capable of winning consistently in the NFL over the past couple years. He can still coach.
How much does that have to do, Dan, with those 3 of the last 4 years, and especially this last season that was so tough for Belichick and the Patriots? How much does that have to do with what you just mentioned and how football in general is changing so much starting at the collegiate level?
Yeah, I think there's just, if you're not, talented at the quarterback position at a pretty high rate, then you have to have an unbelievable roster surrounding your quarterback who might just be a good to really good player. And New England over the last 3 or 4 years didn't have either of those. Mac Jones didn't develop underneath them the way that they had hoped it or anticipated, and the talent of the roster just continued to fall apart, both in the skill position groups and really at the line of scrimmage, which for a long time was their strength. And now that there's so many different dynamics that are coming into play when it comes to the NFL, it just made a lot of sense in understanding. You're still taken aback by it. Again, this is the greatest run in the history of the NFL. It'll never be replicated. So you're still taken aback by it. But if you've watched New England since 2019 and the start of that year, it is not surprising.
Yeah, it's not surprising to see them trying to shift now to a different future. Speaking of, with another vacancy now in the NFL, Dan, Mike Reiss mentioned 2 names, with Mayo, of course, being the assistant coach already there with the Patriots, and Mike Vrabel. When I mentioned those names or any other name that comes to mind, who is an ideal Patriots coach candidate?
Yeah, those 2 guys certainly come to the forefront of your mind. One, who's going to be making decisions of talent and kind of roster building, because that was a role that Coach Belichick has held for a long period of time. So that's got to be a part of this process for New England, not only selecting their next head coach, and it's not going to be all that different. We're going to talk about this a lot today. Who's going to be the next head coach at Alabama? You're stepping into a place that the expectations are incredibly high. And so there's a challenge that comes along with that. And you got to be willing and capable of meeting that challenge. You can go to New England and win the AFC East in 12 games and be a failure because you're following what Coach Belichick has accomplished. So you have to have that right personality to handle that. Again, who's going to be making the decisions? A lot of that is going to determine and being tied to what are they going to do at the number 3 pick this year. I just talked about Coach Belichick potentially going to Washington. They have the number 2 pick. New England has the number 3 pick. Someone might go there as a coach and say, you know what, I do think Mac Jones is a really good player. We don't have to take a quarterback at number 3. Someone might go there and say, Mac Jones is not our future. We have to take a quarterback at 3. So I think, getting the questions answered of who's going to be building the roster as a general manager and then what's their viewpoint on the quarterback spot is going to be very much so attached to who their next head coach is going to be.